Okay, so this video is obviously on how to solve the practice quiz in chapters 9 and 10. Okay, so when it says find the inverse function, basically again you just solve for x as a function of y. So this amounts to solving for x and you'll have a y in the answer. So as always, if we only have one square root here, which is nice, we'll put the 6 on the other side. Get the square root by itself, y minus 6, y minus 6 over here, so y plus 6 equals 3 square roots of 4 minus x. Now square both sides. So square both sides. Over here we get, let's see, let's leave it as y plus 6 squared. And on this side we have 9. 3 squared is 9 times 4 minus x. Again, we just want to solve for x. So let's put the 9 over here. Divide both sides by 9. So y plus 6 squared divided by 9 equals 4 minus x. I'm going to put the x over here to make it positive. And then we can put this over here and make it negative. So the x over here now, so then we have x is equal to 4 minus y plus 6 squared divided by 9. And that is a totally fine way to do it, to leave it. We could square that out, but I think this looks a little bit cleaner. So that's it. So that is our inverse function. So basically f negative 1, this would be equal to f negative 1. Okay, that's all it is for part 1. Then, as far as ranges and domains and things, the domain of f of x, a here, and again, you don't need to ever print out these things. I'm not printing them out since both my printers don't work, and I can't go to school. So anyway, it's okay to not print these things out. Just be really neat with trying to copy the same format and the numbers and circle the answers and stuff so I can find your work easily. Okay, so part A says the domain of f of x. So the problem here is we just can't have square root of a negative number. So let's see, we have the square root of 4 minus x. So the square root of 4 minus x is the problem. So it looks like x can't be bigger than 4, right? It can be 4, that's square root of 0, but if x is 5, it's square root of a negative number. So x has to be less than 4. So we just can say here the domain for A is x has to be less than or equal to 4, which includes negative numbers. It can be all the negative numbers. So that's pretty much the domain there. And then what is the range? So B, what can x be? So if we look at x, and what we do is we look at this, right? So when x is 4, what is it? So y is, I'm just going to write it again down here. So y is 3 times the square root of 4 minus x minus 6. So we'll start with 4. When x is 4, that's 0. That's the biggest x can be. So that's 0, so it's negative 6. So we start off at negative 6. Other than that, we can make this square root as big as we want. Just make x a negative number. We can make this number as big as we want. We're always going to take away 6 from it. So the smallest it can be is negative 6, because this is always positive. So it's going to be a positive number plus negative 6. So the smallest is going to be negative 6, but it can go to infinity. So our domain then, because we can make this as big as we want by making x negative. So the domain then goes from infinity to negative 6. So we can write it like this, and you can't include infinity. So we'll put it like this. It's usually smallest one first. We can include negative 6. So let me cross that out. So it goes like this. So it goes from negative 6 to infinity. And we can't include infinity, so you put it that kind of parentheses. Okay, now what about the inverse function? And the nice thing about the inverse function is we don't have to do any more work. So the domain of f negative 1 of x, the domain of f negative 1 of x is just the range of this. So we don't have to do any more work, we just put the range of f in it. So negative 6, infinity. And the range is just the domain of the function, so it would be x less than or equal 4. So all you gotta do is switch them. The domain, oops, did I get that mixed up? C is the range is the domain. I got that mixed up, looks like. The domain is, yes, wait. C is the domain, is the range. D is the, okay, I didn't get it mixed up, is the range is the domain. Yep, that's right. So you just put the range here. This is the range, which is the inverse function's domain. So all you gotta do is swap them. So if you do the work for these two, you're already done here, you just switch them. Okay, number 2, this one's a lot easier. We want to solve for x. Again, we can just swap the two if one's in the top, one's in the bottom. So we have x minus 6 is equal to 4 over y. Solve for x, add 6 to both sides. X is equal to 4 over y plus 6. So that would be our inverse function. In this case, it's a function of y, like in the other case. We could change that and say y is an x. Our new functions to have the, normally we have y as a function of x, but it doesn't matter. That's the idea there. Okay, so then part A says, what is the domain of f of x? So what's the domain of this? We just can't have x equals 6, so it's okay to just write all x, and some people write like this, all x except x cannot be 6. And you can put that in some kind of brackets like this. So it can be all x except x not equal to 6. Because then we're dividing by 0. Remember, the two things we can't do is divide by 0 and have the square root of a negative number. Okay, then what is the range, which is typically trickier? So I'll write domain here to remind myself. Okay, so what is the range? And let's look at that again. I'm going to rewrite it down here. So y is equal to 4 over x minus 6. Let's see, when x equals 6, it's 4 over 0, which is like infinity, positive infinity. When x is, right, so when x is really just less than 6, it's going to be negative. We have negative infinity. When x is just greater than 6, it's positive. We have positive infinity. So we can go all the way from positive infinity to negative infinity, but you can't have infinity. And we can make this as big as we want by making the bottom as small as we want. If this is like 6.1, we could get 40, because it'd be 6.1 minus 6, which is 0.1. 40 divided by 0.1 is 40. We can make this as big as positive number as we want, or as big negative number as we want by putting like 5.9 in the bottom. So this can be anything we want between infinities. We can make any number we want out of 4 over x minus 6. And then when x goes to infinity, this becomes 0. So, but can it actually ever be 0? That's the thing. For this to be 0, then x has to be infinity. 4 divided by infinity is 0. That's the only way to get 0. So technically, we can't really include 0 because that has infinities. So really our range here, the range would be all of x except, really I guess I should put y here. The range would be a y. So the range would be all of y except y is not equal to 0, because the only way to get 0 is to have an infinity in the bottom. But we can get as small as we want. That's because we just put a bigger and bigger number in the bottom. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. That's our range. And then for C and D, like we said before, all you got to do is flip them. So C is the range, the domain of the inverse, which is the range. So you just copy that one down there. So the domain would be, and you should change it to an x. So it would be all x except x not equal to 0. And the range would be the first one, which would be like a y. There can be all y except y cannot be 6. Okay, So that's it. Okay, I will finish the backside on a different video since this one's already at 10 minutes.